Welcome back to the We'll Bring the Popcorn Film and TV podcast. I'm Brad. That right there is Josh, and today we are reviewing How to Train Your Dragon and The Life of Chuck.
So we got word this week that Robert Eggers is going to be directing a new version of A Christmas Carol, and he's got Willem Dafoe already pegged to play Ebenezer Scrooge, which is fantastic. I love that idea. You know, they work so well together on Nosferatu, and they just have a great working relationship there. So excited to see that. Don't know how that's going to interfere with his plans to produce the werewolf movie that he's wanting to produce as well, but it's exciting. He's going to take probably a darker spin on A Christmas Carol, and I'm excited to see what he does with it.
Yeah, if you know Robert Eggers' stuff, he has an attention to detail when it comes to period pieces that's almost unmatched, because he not only like dialogue, but the look and the clothing and just the mood and everything. So I'm kind of excited about that. And we know Christmas Carol's been done to death. Yeah. There's 376 different versions of it out there. The last one I can remember was the Robert Zemeckis animated Jim Carrey one that I can think of. That's, everyone's a little mixed on that animation style and stuff that he did. But having Robert Eggers do it and put it, he's writing it for Willem Dafoe. No one's signed on yet. He hasn't signed on for it yet. They've done, I think, Willem Dafoe's done the last 3 movies of Robert Eggers and stuff. So it's probably a pretty good chance he could get him. Willem Dafoe is Ebenezer Scrooge. That just sounds like perfect casting. Like it could be a lot of fun, but I look forward to it maybe being a little bit darker and a little more just, I don't know, that Robert Eggers style to it. It sounds like something he'll do after he finishes Werewolf, which is due out next Christmas, I believe. So that would mean like Christmas 2027 is where he likes releasing everything around Christmas time. And why would you change that for A Christmas Carol?
Of course. Yeah, knowing the studio, they try to release it in like July or something crazy. But no, it's perfect timing for it. I love it. I love, you go back in our archives and check out what we thought of Nosferatu, obviously the last major film that he's put out, and, are raving about the cinematography and the lighting and the sound and the ambiance and the way he likes to incorporate all those things into his movies. But to take something that's as beloved as A Christmas Carol that, like you said, has been done quite a bit, but him putting his own spin on it, I think we could get like a really cool adaptation of this story and maybe make it a little darker and grittier and,
get a little frightening to it about when the ghosts show up to him, and it's a little bit scary. Like, it can be a little frightening. There
are some dark elements in the story that you can have fun with and play with, and he's the perfect guy to do that, and I'm just excited for him to get his hands on it and see what he could do with it, because, like we said, fantastic filmmaker, great at period pieces as well. I'd say him and Ryan Coogler are probably the top 2 period piece type directors right now, especially with how good Sinners was, and just him getting a story like this and being able to put his own spin on it. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, I was surprised. Robert Eggers is doing A Christmas Carol. Okay, Willem Dafoe's Ebenezer Scrooge. All right, I've already bought my ticket.
He gets it. It's almost like he picks his projects that he knows Willem Dafoe would do great in, and Willem Dafoe's great in everything, but it's almost like, oh yeah, it makes perfect sense.
He's also in 376 movies a year.
He really is. Like, he's in so much stuff.
I joke because if you go back and look at 2024, I believe he was in like 8 films or something like that.
It's not surprising.
He was in quite a lot of films last year.
Just a guy that just kills it in everything he does. It's like him and Samuel L. Jackson, like back and forth on if it's not one of them in a movie, it's probably the other, right? And I just love seeing that for both of them.
So I want to move us right into our next story that I'm really excited about. It's been a very long time coming. Spaceballs released in 1987. Mel Brooks was the king of those parody films back then with Blazing Saddles and with Spaceballs, just everything that he did during that time. And they tried for many years to get a sequel done, and we reported on it, I believe it was last year, that Josh Gad was co-writing with Mel Brooks and stuff, but they finally said Spaceballs 2 is coming out in 2027, and they went even further than that. Rick Moranis is coming out of retirement to play Dark Helmet again. He's turned down pretty much everything but that Ryan Reynolds mobile ad. Yeah. That's the last thing I can remember seeing him in. He's turned basically everything down. Like some of the sequels that they were supposed to do for this back in the 90s, the 2000s, it didn't happen because he turned it down, but they got Rick Moranis to come back as Dark Helmet.
See, that's a huge get in getting Rick Moranis back, but it's not the only guy coming back for the film. You got Mel Brooks himself who's going to be in this film. Mel Brooks is going to be 101 years old when this movie comes out. Insane, phenomenal. The guy's just an absolute comedy legend, and he's timeless at this point. He's going to be 101 when this film comes out. That's insane to think about.
He'll be one of the oldest actors ever to be in a film. I think the current record's like 122, which is mind-boggling.
Yeah,
but he would be right there
yeah.
in like second place at 99 to 100.
Anything over like 85 to 90 is impressive, and this guy is hitting triple digits by the time this film comes out. Absolutely insane. Mel Brooks is iconic and a legend. You got Bill Pullman coming back. You've got his son coming back with him as well, Louis Pullman, who was most recently Bob or Sentry in the Thunderbolts, and he's going to be in it. You've also got Daphne Zuniga is coming back as well. Like so many iconic people from the original film are coming back. And then you've got also Keke Palmer being attached to it, and Josh Gad's going to be in it as well. A lot of rumors going around that Josh Gad is going to be John Candy's son.
That's what it feels like. With his sense of humor, his look, and everything else, like he's got to be Barf's son. Like call him Chuck or Ralph or something else. Like
some kind of
you got to pay off for that. But they're keeping it under wraps, but it just... I don't know who else it could be unless it's a new character. Keke Palmer, I'm not sure. They didn't really release. Maybe she's the new droid or something, but there were some rumors Ariana Grande was being asked, which she could be the droid or something. But yeah, I really feel like the rumored name right now of Vespa and Lone Star's son is Starburst, which is kind of a play off of that, but maybe they could do a joke where they just call him Bob for short, because that would mean 3 films in a row that because he was Bob in Top Gun Maverick, he was Bob in Thunderbolts. Let him be Bob in here.
Yeah, just keep the Bob name.
3 different franchises being a Bob.
I love that. But like Spaceballs is such an iconic, legendary parody film. It's kind of one of the standard bearers for that genre of filmmaking anyway. It's still highly revered. It's going to be 40 years to the date of the original film by the time the sequel comes out. What a great way to pay respect to, such an iconic movie 40 years later, having the follow up to it. Normally we kind of suck our teeth a little bit when it comes to like sequels and stuff being made. And is it going to be good? We don't know if it's going to be any good.
You got to see if that type of humor, because it's poking fun at everything.
Yeah,
if it's going to work.
Yeah, and a lot of those movies that were funny then may not translate to being funny now, and that's always our concern. So a little bit of trepidation there, but I mean, this is one of, if you're into any type of that nerd culture, old-timey science fiction film, Spaceballs is a film that a lot of people just absolutely love, and I'm excited to see what they can do with it and see if it translates now and it would work in 2027 as opposed to how well it worked in 1987. We'll see, but that's exciting. Yeah,
if you watch the announcement trailer, you could see, okay, they poked fun plenty in that announcement trailer. Mel Brooks wearing the Spaceballs, the sweatshirt, which I'm sure they're going to have an incredible amount of merchandise that's just Spaceballs, the shirt, Spaceballs, the lunchbox, Spaceballs, the anything, and it better be called Spaceballs 2, The Search for More Money. They joked about that in the original film. They cannot change it. It has to be Spaceballs 2, The Search for More Money.
Yeah, and it would make the most sense, and hopefully they lean that way. And I'm excited for that film, man. That's one that
I did want to read the description of the film because it just shows how ridiculous it is. So they're describing Spaceballs 2 as a non-prequel, non-reboot, sequel part 2, but with reboot elements franchise expansion film. That's the official description of this film.
That is both hilarious and mind-numbing, and I'm here for all of it.
Okay, it checks out.
It makes sense, right? But that's hopefully what we're working with, and I know Josh Gad will take good care of it, and he's got Mel Brooks at the helm with him too. So hopefully they craft a story that works, and
I'm excited to see what they come up with. See Bill Pullman back as Lone Star, and see just what they joke and make fun of. Like it just one of those. Like even if it's bad, I'm going to have Rick Moranis back as Dark Helmet.
Yeah, I was going to say we're kind of bearing the lead with the fact that Rick Moranis, who's been absent from Hollywood for decades now, minus an occasional appearance here, is back in the fold and doing this film. I'm so happy to see that. I really hope he gets his chance now to do something really cool with this and kind of get his flowers by the time the movie comes out, because he was in so many incredible films in our childhood that he never really got like a modern day celebration for everything that he's done. And I'm kind of hoping he gets that when his film comes out and people show just how much love they have for him and how revered he is as a comedic actor, as a talented actor in his own right. So I'm excited to see him back on screen in a role that he's synonymous with and is one of the most iconic roles in his career, of which he has several. But this is another one that I hope brings him back in the fold. And maybe that's not the last thing we see him in. Hopefully that's a sign of more things to come for him.
And hopefully we get Michael Winslow back as well, because he was a huge part of the 80s and 90s with his sound effects that he does with his voice and stuff. I rewatched Spaceballs right after the announcement. I had to put it on and watch it again after that. And give as many cameos as you can. Like even, say that they're going to jump to ludacris speed and they kick over to a soldier and it's ludacris.
That would be so funny. Like there's so many fun
There's so much stuff they can play, but you could have Vin Diesel show up in a Charger spaceship up next to the Winnebago and challenge them to a race or something. They have so much, and that's what they did in the announcement trailers. Talk about, we've had 7 Jurassic Parks, and we've had this and that, and we've had so much stuff. Like they have the prequel series, they have the sequel series, they have everything in the last 40 years when it comes to pop culture that they can make fun of the MCU. Like they've got so much that they can reference. So we'll see just how deep that, you got Josh Gad involved, so we get any Disney or Frozen jokes and stuff made in there as well. Like there's just so much they could play with to make this into, just make it 3 hours of just gag after gag. And as long as Rick Moranis is there, I'll be happy.
I'm excited for that. That's one definitely looking forward to in 2 years. 2027 can't get here fast enough for that. But in the meantime, I want to move us over into another story that we have this week. You have one of the biggest shows on television, Stranger Things, is finally coming up with its final season. By the end of this year, they got all the dates released out for that. Obviously, we've talked about that before. But now we have some details coming out about the animated series, Stranger Things Tales from 85. So it looks like it's going to be taking place between seasons 2 and 3 of the show, and it's going to feature, the kids from the show. Now, we're still a little fuzzy on details as if these, if the actors who playing the kids are going to be also doing the voice roles or not. Hasn't been confirmed yet, so we're still kind of in the weeds on that, but looks like it's going to be coming out next year. Like, we're not going to have that long of a wait for it, so it seems like we're going to get it very quick to follow up the end of Stranger Things, which is just going to be the biggest pop culture thing at the time at the end of the year when this comes out.
If I had to guess, probably at least the boys are probably going to be sound-alikes or something, just because it's been 10 years for this show. So if you're going back between seasons 2 and 3, they're going to sound a little bit different. Like they've hit puberty, they've grown up. Millie Bobby Brown, the females, because their voices don't change as much as men, they're going to have to alter a little bit. But I have a feeling most of them are going to be sound-alikes. But it'd be really nice if they did bring them back. But I did like that they want to make it like an 80s Saturday morning cartoon. So it's going to have that sort of feel, even though like a horror aspect and stuff to it. But it's really interesting to see, like, this is the kind of the beginning of spinoffs. Is this going to help or hurt? Like, why do we have more monsters and more tales and more fighting between season 2 and 3 that we didn't get in the show? And will that change anything in the show? Is it going to still be connected? But I'll check it out. I mean, if it's an 80s style Saturday morning cartoon set in the Stranger Things universe, I'll give the first season a go and see how it is. If it's still got everybody involved with it, but I have a feeling it's going to be sound-alikes, but it would be great if they could get the original cast back to do the voices. It
would be awesome. It would be a ton of fun, and I know they're talking like it's going to have that 80s, Saturday morning cartoon feel, but it's also going to have inspiration from the very popular Arcane series and the Spider-Verse films. So a lot of cool animation influences that are going to attach to this. And hopefully it creates a product that, like you said, doesn't take away from the magic of the show. How canonic is it going to be to the overall story from Stranger Things? We don't know. Is it going to be just kind of loosely connected with these kids off on little side quests and adventures between the 2 seasons? We don't know, but it could be a lot of fun still. Like, it's going to be fun to check out, and it's one we'll definitely have on our docket to watch. Maybe we review it. I don't know, depending on the timing of it, but I'm sure we could, if not do a weekly watch-along, then maybe just do like an end-of-season recap and what we thought of it. But it's definitely going to be one worth watching, and it's going to have a lot of people having eyes on it, obviously, with as big as Stranger Things has been. They have a lot of pressure to kind of follow on with this and have it be something good and worthwhile. So we'll see what the end product winds up being.
It's going to be really interesting how to cover the final season of Stranger Things, because you've got it dropping, Thanksgiving, then Christmas, and then New Year's. So you have I mean, the between Thanksgiving and Christmas is a break. I believe that's it, isn't it? Thanksgiving, Christmas, and then New Year's. So it's the Christmas to New Year's for having the final block of it is going to be like the really quick turnaround. Like, all right, we got to binge watch all of these together. But I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, it's been 10 years to get these 5 seasons done, and I'm really looking forward to see how they end up ending the main series and then how they keep it going with the anime, because we've talked so much with The Walking Dead and Game of Thrones and other stuff. If they do it right, it can be fun to have those continuations. If you flood the market with too many things, then you get so many people, especially me, if it's like, all right, I have 15 Walking Dead shows I have to watch to keep up with the overall story. Yeah. I lose interest in the whole thing.
Sure, yeah, and that's a danger you risk running of like oversaturation of stories and storytelling, right? And it's something you got to be very careful of. If the quality is there, then sure, it could work. Yeah, I agree. The way they're rolling out the end of the final season here, I believe we're getting 4 episodes at Thanksgiving and then 2 episodes at Christmas and the final episode on New Year's Eve, which is going to be insane because it's like a 2.5, 3 hour episode.
I think they said they're all basically movies.
All long episodes. So we got a little bit of time. That time crunch at the end of the year is going to be real interesting because we're going to have to spend a ton of time watching it. But I'm so excited for it. It feels like it's been forever since we had season 4. I think it's like 3+ years now, at least, since we've had season 4. And it's just overly anticipating this show, which unfortunately got delayed by the writer's strike, as so many other things did, but we're finally here at the end of the line. I'm excited for it.
It was crazy to see some of the cast, because we know they've grown up throughout the years, and they've done other films and stuff, but to see, I believe it was Tudum that they showed up to, Netflix's big thing, and the beards and shaved head and looking just completely grown up now, and like,
my God, where's the time gone? It just goes to show, man, time's a funny thing, man.
Yeah, speaking of time, we've got less than a month now until Superman is in theaters.
So
I think we've had 2 things that have been the official kickoff to the DCU now, but this is the first main film for the new DCU with the Superman. I'm really looking forward to it. It had the biggest of one-day sale of any movie so far this year. When they put tickets on sale, we got an early screening of it that we're going to be doing, which I'm excited for. But James Gunn is already, everyone's asking him questions online and talking about it. He's confirmed that they have a Wonder Woman film that's being written right now. He's already planning out a sequel to Superman, but it may not be a direct sequel, which I know a lot of people who may have not liked the Snyderverse, like, oh, are we jumping straight into Batman versus Superman or the Justice League or something? The rumor is it's more of a World's Finest type of deal, where it might still be a Batman and Superman team up, but it's not going to be quite Batman versus Superman. They're not planning Justice League right now, but it's kind of interesting. Did they learn the lesson and stuff from the Snyderverse if you're doing one Superman film and his next one is a team up? Because we have yet to know when we're getting a Batman film. You know, we have Robert Pattinson as Batman. That's, James Gunn keeps saying, he's outside of the DCU. He is not Superman's Batman. So are we going to get a sequel just like we did in the Snyderverse that didn't set up Batman before we get a team up?
And it could be the way he's introducing him here, which could be very interesting. I know the World's Finest storyline is a fun story, and I'm excited to see what he could do with it if that's going to be the case. But I am glad they're not directly jumping straight into Justice League again. That would be just a terrible, terrible decision. I know since the news broke about Wonder Woman, everybody's kind of starting to project who's going to be the pick for that. I know there's some early fan pushing for Ana de Armas to come in and potentially play her. I know there's some other actresses that are being thrown about. Her
Bix from Andor, which I forget the actress's name, but she would be fantastic.
I think is her name. Like, she's in the mix. Alexandra Daddario is another name I've heard thrown about, probably because of the blue eye element for Wonder Woman. Several people on the minds of people already trying to fan cast and trying to see who's going to happen. But James Gunn's not afraid to, take that swing and get those actors in as well. But he's also been shy about not going for top name, actors to play in his roles as well. Because, David Cornswell's not the biggest name actor to play the role of Superman, so we'll see how that does for him. But you never know who he's going to pick for these. I know everybody's on pins and needles waiting to see who he picks as Batman, because Batman is such a pivotal character in the overall DC universe and whatever universe you're trying to put together, Batman's an integral part of it. And, the casting on that is very important. And if he's not going to use Robert Pattinson, he's got to make a choice quickly if he's going to start working on that. But we'll see where he lands on it. This is such a huge movie for the DCU to do well. It's going to do very well commercially.
It's huge for Warner Brothers too, because they're
thing
banking on this. Like, we need something financially viable to help us. Superman is kind of what they're putting everything behind.
Which is why it's so important for them to stick the story and look at it right. The movie itself looks phenomenal from the trailers we've seen. I'm super excited for it. I'm going in with kind of a clean slate with this, just to kind of see what the quality of the storytelling itself is going to be, because that's the key. Like, you can have a visually stunning film, but if the quality of the story is not there, it's going to tank, and it's going to tank hard. Now, commercially, it's looking like it's off to a great start with the ticket sales and everything, but you got to stick the story, and it's got to be good. And James Gunn, to his credit, for the most part, has told really good stories, with his line of work in the MCU before he switched over to DC. Like, his work with the Guardians of the Galaxy shows that he can take and make a really good, line of stories, and hopefully that carries over to his work with DC. He seems to be really cognizant about wanting to do that and do it well and not put things out that he's not happy with. So if he's putting his stamp of approval on it, we'll see if he's got it right.
Well, the other problem could also be is that he's the head of DC. He's writing and directing this film, so who's really going to tell him no to something that he's want to do? We know with Marvel, he has people he's got to answer to and everything else. Pretty much for this film, he answered to himself. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that works out. This would be the first one where he's really basically in full control over everything that he does with it, because, of course, we know with the MCU, you've got to think about how things are connected and not connected. You've got to fight back. Like, he fought back of having Thor in the third Guardians of the Galaxy film because they wanted to have that mashup continuation, but he had to fight back and forth with Marvel on that about having to include Thor in it and everything else. So it's going to be really interesting. Yeah, that it looks great, but it also looks very, I don't want to say busy. Like, you've got a kaiju creature, you've got Green Lantern, you've got multiple villains, you got Lex Luthor, and you've got it's just so many different things going on. They're showing you the biggest, flashiest stuff. So I'm really seeing what's going to be at the heart and the core of Superman and his performance and that character and how they do Clark to Superman and everything else. We've seen a few bits and pieces that it looks like, but I mean, David and everybody who's played Superman are large creatures, especially Henry Cavill and everything else, and that's what we still go back to Christopher Reeves, is that how he did, Clark, of having Clark being more down here and with the glasses and being more nerdy, and then when he's Superman, he's like straight up, and you see that confidence and stuff, and it's still that great to this day, because you could look at him and say, yep, that's Clark, that's Superman.
Yeah, and they've done some fun marketing stuff with it. I just saw a video the other day of them talking to David with his Clark Kent glasses on, and they were like just having a conversation, and then they cut back to him, and he's got his glasses off, and they're like, "Where's Clark? Where did he go?" Like,
he's like, "Hey, Clark. Hey, Jimmy." Cut back to him. He's got his glasses. Who are you?
It's so funny. I love it. It's such a stupid trope, but it's so funny that it works. But I love it, and I love that they're leaning into it and doing some fun stuff with it. But we'll see where the story lands.
I still love, and I loved Henry Cavill as Superman. I enjoyed the Snyderverse stuff. It had its problems and issues, but Henry Cavill did prove that the glasses thing may not be that far-fetched. He walked around Times Square when Man of Steel was coming out with glasses on, and no one approached him. He was able to be Clark Kent and be out in the middle of Times Square without anybody saying anything to him. So I'm like, it somewhat works.
I could tell you with absolute confidence if he tried that right now, it wouldn't work.
Oh yeah,
but I get what you're saying though. Like it's fun. It's a funny trope from for comic books that always makes me laugh, because any type of logic does not apply there.
Yeah, James Gunn also talked that he has an animated Crypto series in the works as well. So, Crypto is a fully CG animal in the movie. It's based off of his dog, which was a rescue, but they've changed the color and changed the look of it. That dog doesn't exist. That's a fully CG character. So I don't know if talking animated, if it's going to go cartoon 2D animated, or if it's going to stick in the 3D realm, but they've got a lot of stuff going with it.
A lot of balls in the air in DC right now. They're working on a ton of projects, a lot of stuff coming up. I'm excited for Peacemaker. I'm excited for, a lot of stuff that they've got coming up. They got to stick like we said, got to stick the landing on the stories to have
Yeah,
this
Superman is the one that it matters more than anything. If they don't stick the landing on this one, everything else they have coming up is going to either be canceled or need to be changed completely because it just didn't work.
Yeah, so they're betting big on it. We'll see. We got a couple weeks left. I'm excited for that for sure coming up. Moving over a little bit to a little bit of Marvel news before we go into our movie reviews. And we have an update here. The upcoming Black Panther animated series, Eyes of Wakanda, is one that's coming out. It's going to feature 4 30-minute long episodes. So about the equivalent of a 2-hour movie, but it's going to be like a shorter run animated series that's going to come out later this year. And I'm excited for it. And we'll see what happens. One of the things they've come out and mentioned is that Iron Fist is going to be included. But it may not be an Iron Fist that we're kind of used to seeing. Don't know what that means exactly yet, but it's the first inclusion of Iron Fist in any of these newer MCU properties that I know a lot of people are clamoring, especially with like Daredevil and the talks of, the Defenders coming back for it, what that's going to look like. But this is the first Iron Fist reference we've had in the modern MCU, so we'll see how that works out.
Yeah, we get potentially Iron Fist showing up in Eyes of Wakanda. We have Daredevil Born Again Season 2 coming out next year that we've already got some of the Defenders lined up. Are we going to get all of them in there? So could this be the kickoff of bringing the Iron Fist character? We don't know what form it's going to be. Like I said, it's going to be one we don't expect. Are they going to carry that one over into the MCU or not? But it is strange to me that it's 4 episodes at 30 minutes each, because then why wouldn't you just do a 2-hour movie and call it Eyes of Wakanda instead of splitting it up into episodes when it's only 4? But hey, you get to release and have more stuff. But it just kind of like 4 episodes for the entire season is very, very short. So you have to have a very concise story that you're wanting to tell that you can have it done in basically a 2-hour movie split up into 4 chunks.
They've been doing that with some of the recent releases on Disney anyway. Like you've got the Tales of the Jedi, Tales of the, like the stuff that they're doing there that's like 15, 16-minute short animated episodes that are like 6 of them that you could have put together in like an hour and a half and just done like one big story that you're kind of putting together bits and pieces of. It's weird how they're spacing some of that out right now, but we'll see. I'm excited to see what that show looks like, and it's going to be a fun one to check out. But yeah, I mean, time will tell. It's going to be real interesting to see what kind of story they tell and how they introduce a character like Iron Fist that, I think people are ready to kind of accept now, but we'll see what they do with it. I'm not entirely sure what that's going to look like, but I'm excited to see it.
And after Ironheart coming up, I believe Eyes of Wakanda is our next series after that. And then we have Marvel Zombies to close out the year when it comes to the Marvel TV series. So I'm looking forward to Ironheart to see exactly how it goes, because we've been waiting for that for so many years to get that one out.
I think we have Wonder Man, too.
Well, yeah, Wonder Man, I think, is at the end of the year. So I think it's Zombies and Wonder Man in like November, December.
Yeah, a lot of stuff coming up to get out by the end of the year.
I don't know anything about Wonder Man. That was never a character that I really knew anything about, so I'm going into it completely blind. I have no expectations because I know nothing of the character.
And that's kind of fun. We'll see what they do with that and if that's any good, too.
So our first film review that we want to talk about today is How to Train Your Dragon. So this is the live-action adaptation of the animated films, because it is a book series that the animated films are based off of, but this is an adaptation of the animated series. This was done by Dean DeBlois, who did the original. So he basically came out and said, so everyone kind of knew going into this, they were going to do this live action with or without me. So I might as well do it and protect kind of what I've created and loved, because he loved and adored what he did with animated films. I really enjoyed. My kids absolutely love them. This is a pretty straightforward adaptation of it. There's very few changes, a few character changes, and slightly with some of the story, but it's mostly a shot-for-shot remake. But to me, that doesn't mean it's bad. It doesn't mean it's a bad movie just because, and we've debated it so many times when it comes to video game adaptations and cartoon adaptations and book adaptations and stuff. You have some who have a beloved series or film or something that, if you're doing a live action, give me exactly what the book was. You change anything, I hate you. Or you have people who are like, why did you do it straight as that? We've already had that. Give us something new. You can't make everybody happy. And this definitely will, I think, have some people mixed because it is such a straightforward adaptation. But to me, they still captured the heart and the fun of the animated series. And my kids had an absolute blast with it. So it was fun. I think it was good to see him in live action. Again, it didn't change much at all, but it didn't have me during the film thinking like, well, I've already seen this. I was in for the ride for the movie of seeing it all in live action.
Yeah, and I think we're going to differ a little bit on this. Like, I'm fine with them doing a shot for shot, but I think it kind of lacked some of the emotional depth that we got in the animated feature in the live action. Like, I don't think it captured the heart in the same way. Like, you get basically the exact same film, like here as in the animated feature, with a few minor tweaks here and there that really didn't do anything to change the overall story anyway. But I mean, it's almost an entire shot-for-shot replica of the animated feature, which is fine and is good. Don't get me wrong, I had a very fun time watching this film, but I wasn't it could have just been my, mental state going into the movie. It could have been, like I'm dealing with like some of my own personal stresses, getting ready for a vacation and getting ready to try to wrap stuff up too for that. But like it didn't hit the same way emotionally for me that the animated film did. But it's still a good movie. Like, it's still a good, faithful adaptation of the animated feature. And, they do a good job in the story, like, keeping a lot of that story the exact same. And like you said, it's kind of a darned if you do, darned if you don't situation where it's like, do you do the faithful retelling or do you kind of go and make your adjustments and change some of the story a little bit? And they didn't really do that, to their credit. Like, I think it works for them and it works for the film. It just, I don't know, it didn't hit exactly the same way for me emotionally. I had fun watching it, but it wasn't like, it didn't have the same impact on me as the animated feature did.
I can get that. And it's because you're seeing the same story.
Yeah, for me. And it's just, like I said, there's so many factors that can go into like your viewing experience for this. It's still a good movie. Like, it's still fun. Like, it's still a good movie, but it didn't have, for whatever reason, for me, that same impact. But there's so many parallels, like, from the animated feature into this. Like, you still have Gerard Butler, who voiced Hiccup's father in the animated feature, is Hiccup's father in the live action, which is so cool. I love seeing that back because he's literally giving you the exact same lines that he gives you in the animated feature. But it was so cool to see him come back and do it in live action. You could just tell he had an absolute blast.
He was just hamming it up,
just having an absolute blast and a fun time, and that was a lot of fun to see. But yeah, for whatever reason, I don't know why it just didn't hit that same emotional connection for me personally when I saw it. But it's still a good movie.
I think I can see that. Like, the biggest issues I had with it, other than, yes, it is a shot-for-shot remake of it in live action, so you're basically seeing the same story done in live action, so it really can be mixed on how you feel about it. I think they did great with Mason Thames as Hiccup and Nico Parker's Astrid, even though she's not the blonde Viking and everything. She had streaks of blonde hair. She had that sass and attitude. Both of them were great. They played off each other great. I think it's the rest of the gang just didn't have the same impact from it. Like, nothing really against the actors and stuff, but it just felt like they felt flat.
Yeah.
The rest of them just felt really flat with it. Like, the dragons look great. The scenes and the settings of Burke and everything look great. And yet Gerard Butler back as Stoic. He was a ton of fun and everything. But yeah, it was, for me, the biggest kind of thing that I didn't care for as much is that the rest of the kid gang there, they just didn't have that same feel of fun and whimsy as they did in the animated series. Sure. Like, they just felt kind of meh, like just really flat. Like, again, the story, I think it gave you a little more thrill with the final battle just because you get the roar and the big and stuff, but like, I can see it from your standpoint. I don't think a lot of people may like it just because it's a shot-for-shot remake. And when I said it still has a lot of the heart, I think it does, especially between the relationship between Hiccup and Toothless and stuff. Sure. But it does lose a little bit of that with the anime. I do think you got a little bit more out of Stoic and Hiccup because you could play in that father-son dynamic more in live action. Yeah. But it could have used changing things up a little bit and probably a little better casting with the rest of the Hiccups group.
Yeah, I agree, and it's just I think that kind of takes away from it a little bit. But I enjoyed Nick Frost as Gobber. Obviously, he was played by Craig Ferguson, did the voice in the animated feature. Nick Frost is awesome. I loved him as Gobber too in this film. Like he was a lot of fun in it. But I agree, where they made a better impact was the live adaptation of the fighting and the elements of that. That's a little bit lost in the animated version of it compared to this. So I think they definitely did the action part in it better, especially the feel of the dragons and like the dragon nest scene felt a little bit more impactful with it being live action as opposed to animated. And like you said, that final fight felt it felt better in the live action sense because it did some really cool stuff with that. But yeah, the overall just tone, the kid gang was not as good as it was in the animated films, which nothing against the actors. They're all fine actors in their own right, I'm sure, but it just didn't have the same impact as it did. And you kind of give a little and take a little here, but that's not to say that it's not a good movie. Like it's still a lot of fun. If you love the animated feature, you're going to like this. It's going to I think people are going to enjoy it. I don't know if it's going to be as commercially successful, obviously, but it was still a good tale. I had a good time watching it. These are minor gripes that I'm having about it, and it didn't really take away my overall enjoyment of the story.
Like I said, with the intro here, is that it's going to cause a lot of mix that we've talked about with any adaptation. If you make too many changes, people are going to hate it because it's not as much as a source. And of course, the animated films are not a one-to-one of the books. They change plenty of stuff from the books. I think there's 3 films and there's something like 10 books or something to it. So they kind of, it's not the same story all throughout. So they did have a chance with the live action to include a little bit more of the book, do things a little bit differently. They actually came in like $10 to $15 million under the budget of the first animated film. So they made the live action for a little bit cheaper than they did the animated film 10 years after they had done the animated film or something. I forget when the first one came out, but yeah, it's a fine film. It's well shot. Cinematography looks good. The interactions between the humans and the dragons, which can, like we pointed out with Lilo and Stitch, at times when Nani's trying to touch Stitch, it looks like she's just rubbing the air. Like you had some good look of, okay, it looks like they're actually touching this creature and everything that they did good with that. And I said, our Astrid and our Hiccup, they were both good. I'm glad they didn't try to emulate his voice from the animated because it's mostly the actor's voice just turned up a bit more so that they gave him his own personality. At times he sounded a little bit more like him, but I think they did a fine job there. But yeah, I think probably the biggest gripes is, while I didn't dislike the film because of it, it is a straight adaptation. It didn't really change anything. The kids were a little bit mixed. I don't know if I feel like they had about as much screen time as they did in the animated film. It just didn't have as much fun. Yeah. They weren't as much fun to watch as the other times where like you have just, I don't know, they didn't feel like a big cohesive group together like they do in the animated series.
Right. That connectiveness wasn't there. It was a little bit lacking for me, but still an overall good story at the end of the day. So How to Train Your Dragon is basically a shot-for-shot remake of the animated feature. A few minor changes here and there that try to make it a little more practical in live action, but it's still a lot of fun. I think the support cast was a little underwhelming. The main actors do a good job in this. If you love the animated feature, I think you're going to get a lot of enjoyment out of this too. If what you're looking for is basically a shot-to-shot remake of the animated feature, I'm going to give this film personally like a 7.5. And I want to score it higher because it is a good adaptation, but the underwhelmingness of some of the supporting cast, not having that same heart as the original animated feature, is going to knock it down a little bit for me. It's still a fun story. It's still visually stunning, very well put together. One that I think the whole family is going to get a lot of enjoyment out of. You said your kids absolutely loved it.
My oldest gave it a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, of course. And that's what these films are for. These are for the kids. So, I mean, you're hitting your mark there, but I have to give it a 7.5 out of 10 just because, I felt the support cast was a little underwhelming, and for me it didn't have that same emotional capture because I knew what the story was, and they didn't really veer too much from it in a way that kind of made it a little bit more of its own thing, which, can be a good thing and a bad thing. I just don't think it carried the same weight as the animated feature. It's not a fair comparison, but when you're doing a shot for shot remake, you can't really help yourself. So for that, I knock it down a little bit, but I still got a lot of enjoyment out of this.
Yeah, I agree. It's a solid film. It's well shot. It looks good. The CGI looks good for the dragons. Toothless is still the fun little puppy kitty type of dragon that's very playful and stuff. But I agree with your points. It is a shot-for-shot remake of the animated film, so it's one that you can go into and watch and enjoy it, but you still come out like, was that really necessary in the end to have it if you didn't change anything, if you didn't really do anything new? Like, but at the same time, it's allowing those fans of the animated series to see their favorite dragons and characters in real life. So it's that kind of walking that fine line of some are gonna love it because, hey, I get to see Toothless and the rest of the gang and Hiccup and Astrid and everybody in live action. Perfect. You gave me the same story. Well, it was still a great story. I'm going to give it an 8, but as I do most of the time with my stuff, it gets a little extra points from where my scoring is to add in my kids' stuff, because in the end, as you mentioned, it is about the kids. Sure. Like I said, it's a shot-for-shot remake. As you mentioned, supporting cast, they were okay. They were just so-so. They didn't really bring any extra humor or depth. It didn't really give you anything that would surprise you or shock you or do anything new, because it is such a shot-to-shot. But, so I would be around a 7.5 with you, but I'm giving it that extra bump because my kids came out of it absolutely loving it. They want to go back to the theaters and watch it again. They haven't stopped talking about it. There's actually an add-on for Minecraft where they added in all the dragons and more stuff that you can go that we had immediately buy once we got home because they put it out for the film. Like, they loved it as much as the animated. And I mean, in the end, that's really what matters, is that the kids who loved the books, who loved the animated films, still love, even though it's the same story to a kid, hey, you're showing me what I loved, but in live action. Let's go.
Yeah, what can you go wrong? And that's the target audience of these films. So I think they're going to hit the mark with the kids, and hopefully it does commercially well. And I'm curious to see if they do follow it up. There was a post-credit scene at the end of this. It was kind of a little fun take on some stuff that was teased in the movie. We'll see if they go on to some of the other animated films and do another one of it. We'll see if they go and play in that world again. I'm
pretty sure they already greenlit the sequel before this even came out.
Yeah, I didn't know that was the case. Okay, so there you go. That answers my question. So they're going to come back to it eventually. It did, the one thing that it did, and I'm already excited to go check it out, but it did make me want to go see the Universal theme park where they have the Isle of Berks set up at Universal in Orlando. I'm going to it later this year, and I'm excited. It made me a little more excited to go check it out, to kind of have that back in the forefront of my mind when I do go see it later this year. I'm like, okay, I want to make a point to go over and see it and check it out because of this film. So, hey, if your point was to do that, it worked for me. So I'm excited.
It's probably the reason why the director said, well, they were going to do it with or without me, so I might as well try to protect my property that I loved, is because they probably, well, hey, we're doing this big new theme park with a land dedicated to How to Train Your Dragon. We need something to help push families and kids to want to come visit this even more. It was probably a big push to do this in live action, to tie it into to the theme park. It's all marketing. Like, you get a film that can do 100, 200 million or more, which I think it's already looking like it's going to make 1 to 125 or so for opening weekend, which is pretty solid for it.
Yeah, really good.
But you feel like part of it being done in live action had to be for that. And again, I went in with the notion and knowing that the directors basically made this film protecting, because he didn't want someone else going in there and turning it into Mad Max or something else. Like, he wanted to protect what he did because he felt so strongly about what he did in animation that he did the same thing in live action, which is good and bad. Like, when they do the second one, hopefully maybe they'll mix in a little bit more. You do have a little more emotional depth in the next two because of what happens with Stoic and things about his mom and just growing up and families and everything else. So there's a little more emotional weight that you could have a bigger impact in live action. But it's going to be really interesting to see if they do make any changes based on feedback of this, or if it makes enough money as a shot-for-shot remake, then they'll probably just go straight for another shot-for-shot remake for the second one.
If it works and it works out for them, we'll see what they do. But How to Train Your Dragon is in theaters now. Go check it out. It's going to be a lot of fun for the whole family. We got a lot of enjoyment, minor grievances aside, and we're excited to hear what you think about it. If you go see the film, come to us in our YouTube comments. Come check out our social media posts this week and let us know what you think about the film. We'd love to have that conversation with you. Now, I want to move us into our second film review of the week. This is The Life of Chuck. It's based on the Stephen King novel. This is one that's veers away from his, he's more world-renowned for horror writing, but he does some drama writing as well, but it still includes some supernatural elements and some things in that for it, and you get that in spades here with The Life of Chuck, especially in the beginning of the film. So the stars Tom Hiddleston as Chuck, who the story is all around, like, the telling of his life in 3 parts. So instead of working from birth to death, we go from his death and work its way backwards to the younger parts of his life. So the story is narrated by Nick Offerman, who I could listen to that man talk
Give
for
me
hours.
everything, Nick Offerman.
Amazing. But you get this telling of this world, and it's set up that, you're seeing all these posts about, congratulations on 39 amazing years, Chuck, and you see this plastered all over the town. You're like, what's going on? They're trying to figure out who this Chuck person is, and you finally find out that Chuck, played by Tom Hiddleston, is on his deathbed with an inoperable brain tumor that's going to kill him. He's 39 years old. He's got a wife and a son, and, this is a really thought-provoking movie about, life and your experiences and how everything is connected. And it does a job of, telling this fantastical story, not only through the eyes of the main character here, but you kind of got this small world built in, and there's just definitely some weird, quirky, supernatural elements tossed into it, because you don't know exactly quite sure what's going on in this first section, which is about the end of his life.
Yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit more spoilers with this, because I'm still kind of racking my brain about how I really felt about this film, because it's well acted, it's well shot, it's got an interesting story, but it left me wanting a little bit in the end. But it also is, like you said, very thought-provoking, where you're thinking about life and enjoying the little moments and what really matters in life and everything. But it is that way that it's segmented in kind of the more supernatural stuff, that you get a payoff, but you don't get a payoff. So right. I want to talk more. So we start off, as you mentioned, in Act 3. This is it's looking at the end of the world. We have earthquakes, and we have flooding, and we have all this stuff, and the internet, and some really funny conversations about the internet and it being wiped out, and what's important about what we won't ever get again, and the internet. I won't ruin that part because it was really funny that between
some adult humor,
adult humor in there, but it's this really kind of mystical, it's apocalyptic into the world, and people reconnecting with each other. Like, you have a husband and a wife who had divorced, and the world is ending. Like, well, we might as well spend it together because we care about each other. And it's looking at the stars, and it's talking about life and what they do in life. And the third act was really fantastical to me. Like, I really enjoyed the emotional impact and everything it was trying to do. But it left you wondering, like, what's really going on? And then we jump back into Act 2, which is Tom Hiddleston's Chuck character about 9 months before he is going to pass away. And you get a really great dancing scene, and you get to see a little bit more of him. But it's like, that lets us know what that third act was really about and everything else too. But when we jump to Act 1, it's all about him as a kid, and it's all great and stuff, but it left me wanting more of that third act, and how just kind of mystical and magical and that supernatural, because you're seeing his face illuminating windows after the power goes out, and it's got this really special kind of magic to it that it loses a little bit in those other two, to me.
Yeah, I think what they were trying to go for here, and this is a very artistic type film, right? So this is what I think it's a metaphor for your worldly experience. So as you're going to die, how do you live those final moments of your life, right? Like, he's finding out that he has this inoperable, brain tumor that's going to kill him, and he's given like 9 months to live. And at the end, that third act is all about like how this is your world perspective. Like everything's crumbling around you, everything's eroding, and your time is coming to an end. And it's kind of like a metaphor for the 5 stages of grief, right? So what you get is you get people panicking, you get anger, you get fear, you get like all the way up to acceptance before the the end of the universe, which is Chuck's experience on the earth, right? So I think this third act is kind of really like a metaphor for the 5 stages of grief that you're going through when you know you're going to you're going to die, and when it's coming, or have at least a relative idea of when it's coming, knowing that you're approaching because not everybody gets the benefit of that, obviously. And it's a really thought-provoking like take on that experience, right? So you get it told as if it's the entire universe that's coming to an end, when it's really just about one man's experience with death, right? So it's kind of an artistic take on that you don't really get at the beginning, because it feels like it's just this apocalyptic story, right? The universe coming to an end, and like, who the hell is Chuck and why should we care, right? You have all these other people, and then you come to find out through further flashbacks that all of these people were involved in his life one way or another, and have some kind of, whether they're background characters that have no serving to his story whatsoever, but they were just tangentially there, and it's all about your worldview. And some of that is shaped by his experiences as a child, and his experiences like with his teacher, where he's like, what happens here to here, this is the way you see the world. And
it's your multitudes, everything that exists in there.
Yeah, and that's kind of the whole message that I think we're trying to get. And it's just told in reverse order from what you would used to see. Because if you had turned this story on its head and told it linearly from life to death instead of death backwards, you could probably have put that picture together a little clearer. Like, your end is coming, and this is your worldview of how the world is ending, and everything's stopping and shutting down. None of these things are important. Like, you don't care about the internet anymore. You don't care about all these other things. You want to reconnect with those that you love, and you want to make good use of the time you have left. And that's kind of that metaphor that plays out in this. And I think that's what they were going for.
Oh, absolutely.
It's just told from end to beginning rather than beginning to end. And it's an interesting take on it that I think the more I think about it, the more I like it. It's just not your traditional way of telling a story.
Oh, yeah. And I think so that's exactly why I'm a little mixed on it, because I absolutely loved the depth that Act 3 gave us, because it was, I think the internet is actually his mind, and because with the brain tumor, he's losing his memories and stuff, so he's becoming disconnected and he's not remembering things. Right. And so that's what the internet is, and it is going through those 5 stages of grief and everything with it. And I think that's why that third act, which began the movie, had the bigger impact on me. Like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is one of my favorite films of all time. We've talked about that. Yeah. And it does things in a very similar way. It starts at the end and then takes you back through it. But I think with this one, the first act had less of an impact on me than the third act did. I wanted more of the third act because I thought it was so beautiful. And you had Karen Gillan in it, who was just always amazing. Got to see her being a little more emotional and dramatic in there. And you got the mystery of like, well, you got all of these machines in the hospital all beeping, and they all have the same heartbeat and all the numbers. And you get, after you watch the other two, or at least the second act, it kind of tells you like, this is all in his mind. The third act was his brain, was his mind. You're seeing him go through of losing memories of people and losing this and that. Because I think most of the movie is about him as a kid in that first act. And it wasn't as impactful. Like, I enjoyed it. Mark Hamill was fantastic as his grandfather. But, when it's showing the life of Chuck, it's all about dancing, and it's about him as a kid. And you get some good emotional dialogue and some connections and everything else, but also adds in another supernatural element, that there's this room at the top of this Victorian house that his grandfather will never let anybody go into. And he finally gets the key and he breaks in, but he sees kind of an empty room. But when his grandfather opens the door, he has this huge reaction, and we find out at the end of the film exactly what's going on. But there was so little payoff to me for that kind of supernatural element. Like, I wanted more out of that. Like, why was it there? Why was it happening? Why was that important to the story that
Yeah.
they got to see? And I get different elements when you're talking about an artistic way of showing. Some people have those flashes where they see their life or they see their death and they see all this other stuff. The grandfather saw multiple peoples and everything else. And like, it started off with a huge payoff. Like that was my favorite part of the movies was Act 3 and Act 2 in that order.
Sure.
And Act 1 was kind of the least out of it because it was good. I'm not saying it's a bad movie at all. It just didn't end with that same impact that it began with. Like it began with such an artistic, beautiful, emotional, interesting story that I don't think it ended as well as it started.
Sure, and I get that, and it's my biggest knock on it is the room itself and the importance to the story. Like, was it absolutely necessary for what we were trying to tell? I don't think it was, but
We spent so much time on it.
Yeah, and they kind of harped on it, and I kind of got lost on that too. But I do think it was a beautifully told story once
absolutely.
you got the entire thing. And I think this one is one of those films that's kind of meant to sit with you for a minute and kind of really think about. Because I even came out of it like, I don't really know how I feel about it. And this is one of those that I kind of took and I kind of thought about what they were telling. And, you know, that kind of transparent for, you know, those of you watching, like we just saw this movie yesterday. So this is still relatively fresh.
It's still
us.
sitting with me.
It's still sitting with us. But this is kind of the raw reaction that I have to it. And it's, I like it the more I think about it. And I do because we get the entire picture. And you know now that it's a life story told in 3 parts. Obviously, there's so much more meat in his youth and his upbringing and his experiences that tie the beginning of the film, which is the end of the story, to the rest of it. And you kind of got to rewire your brain a little bit to think about it that way. But I think they do such an effective job of like having this as somebody's worldly experience and using that metaphor of, you know, everything you know and everything in existence is coming to an end, because that's kind of the way life works, right? That's kind of the way death works. Like, does the world continue? Yes, but this is your world. This is your experience through your eyes, and in your experience, everything ends because, you know, life does have a final point to it for everybody, right? And that's going to trigger some things in me that I don't really like talking about. But I do like the way they approached it here with this story, and the more I think about it, the more I like it. It's done really well and a really well. Like, it's just, I really got a lot of enjoyment out of this. It's a really beautiful story. I can guarantee it. This is going to be an Oscar consideration.
Oh, absolutely.
It's done. Fantastically told story. It's going to be up for awards. I would expect Tom Hiddleston to be nominated. Mark Hamill may get a nomination out of this. I expect it to be in Best Picture consideration. Like, it's that good of a story. I don't know how the general viewing audience is going to see this because of how people consume content, but I really want people to give this film a chance with an open mind, knowing the way the structure of the story works as an end to beginning instead of beginning to an end kind of story. That the third act really does a lot of the heavy lifting in telling you about his life experiences, because that's the bulk of his life anyway, because you're dealing with him as a kid, losing his parents, then losing his grandparents, and some of his life experiences that led him to an adult and set him on the path that he was on. Really, the first 2 acts are really about just the last 9 months of his life. So it's a really small portion of his lived 39-year experience that Act 3 does kind of have to do the heavy lifting, where you see what caused him to, you know, I love the tie-in with his grandmother that he had the closest relationship with, where, you know, the rhythm of the dancing. He's a phenomenal dancer anyway. The dance scene in this
That was such a fun scene.
is so good. Like, it's a really cool scene that leads to a really cool conversation about life and, you know, where they were at in that moment in their lives and what they were going through. And it was a really cool scene. It's worth the price of admission to the movie alone. But I really enjoyed the entire film in its entirety the more I think about it, and I think that's what this film was intended to do.
I laugh because I'm thinking back at that, because you've got a busker who sets up with a drum and she's playing and she's, you know, not getting a lot of people paying attention to her, and he just shows up and he just stops and puts the stuff down and starts dancing. But it's, you also get Nick Offerman doing narration during that scene and him just constantly talking about cowbell, and then she's finally using the cowbell and on and off beat, and it's like just like combining Nick Offerman's dry sense of humor, narrating with the dance scene, like it just made me laugh because of the way he described the cowbell and the drumming and the dancing and everything. But yeah, I sound like I'm being overly critical of the movies because I really enjoyed it. Like, it was a fantastic film. But we've had, about 12 hours to sit on it and stew, and that includes, if we got 8 hours of sleep in that 12 hours and stuff as well, which we normally don't. That's why I said I'm mixing how I feel about it, because I enjoyed it so much, but I feel like, his youth and everything else is a major part of just about everyone's life, and when you're doing it, and it was basically broken down into two parts of dance and the room. And that's why I said you leave that to the end, but it doesn't have as big as an impact. That's why I'm just so back and forth on how I filmed, because like I left the third act feeling like, oh man, this is great. Like, this is beautiful. This is emotional. And because I was actually surprised, and we're still kind of in heavy spoilers, Tom Hiddleston actually isn't that big part of the movie.
Sure.
Like, Act 2 is basically his part. Act 3, he was a billboard. Act 1, he was 1 to 2 scenes that were about 30 seconds to a minute long. But that's he is the main character, but he is a very small part of it. But it's a great film. It's going to have a lot of people, I think, very mixed on it. It's one that I did leave thinking about, and I'm still thinking about it as I'm talking now. And it's one that I want to go back and watch again and dissect and look at it even more. Like, I'm not saying it's a bad film at all. I agree with you. It's going to be up there with some Oscar nominations and stuff. It was just that third act that you start off with the biggest, most impactful, emotional thing, especially when you find out what that is in the second act, and you just find it such a beautiful way of looking at your life flashing before your eyes, and you're going through your perception of your life and your world and how everyone fits in, and you've got so many little Easter eggs of, this person, this house, this location, this, that, and you see it all meld together between the first two, and that made it so beautiful with things. That's where I felt like the first act was still good. It just, I don't know, it left me, it's more that supernatural in the room of like, I get all the meanings of the stages of grief and how we perceive the world and about the little things in life and how everything impacts and all that. And that's why I'm struggling. I'm like, why am I harping on the first act not being as solid to me? Because I enjoyed the other two acts so much. It almost goes back to here in a way of how they broke up their story as well, that it didn't work as well as they thought. And this one, I'm still like, I need to watch it again.
Yeah.
And it's good enough for me to want to go watch again, because I really want to dissect it. This was a Stephen King novella that I had never read. So I had knew nothing of it going in. And like I said, that first act, the third act being the end, was so beautiful and emotional and done well that it almost killed some of my expectations for the rest of it. But it was good. But I'm going to ramble for so much longer because I'm still figuring out how I feel about it. And that's a good thing, because it's having you look at your life, and it's having you look at your perception of events in your life and everything in it. It's a very artistic and kind of profound movie it's great, but I do have feelings it's not going to be for everybody. Not everyone's going to have the same impact out of it, but it's one I really want to watch again so I can really go back through that impact of everything.
Yeah, and that's fair, but I think that's the point they were trying to make with the film, right? It's supposed to make you think about things. This is more of a thought-provoking film, and I know we get some flack for kind of doing the bigger budget, bigger studio stuff that gets the most eyeballs, but this is one of those, like, I love a good artistic film that's thought-provoking when the time is right and when it's done well and it's done right, and I think they do a good job here of getting your brain working that way, right? Like, we talk about the first act. The first act's not that long. It's like 15, maybe 20 minutes of the movie, like starting off right out the gate. And the bulk of the rest of the movie is acts 2 and 3, right? Like that's the, or 2 and 1, depending on how you want to word it, because it's worded 3, 2, and 1. The way the linear story in the movie is working. So acts 2 and 1 are the bulk of the time there, which makes sense. Especially Act 3 is the majority of the film dealing with the younger part of his life. And I want to say, I would be remiss if I didn't say the young kid that plays Chuck in his youth was absolutely fantastic in this film. Just being that curious kid that is kind of quirky, a little shy, doesn't really fit in, but kind of finds his confidence through dance and the experiences that he has, and just his ability, kind of taking his ties to what he learns from his grandmother and the dancing they do together, that he takes to school and becomes a little bit of a better version and confident in himself. That was really well done. The young kid, the younger version of Chuck, was just fantastic.
Yeah, the actor was great. That's why I just don't know how I feel about that first act, because everybody was acting good. Everyone was good with it. And you also get to see the parallels because of his adult life from his grandfather, who's very much pushing this or that, and you need to know this. Like, you're not going to make a living off of dance, but numbers are everywhere, and their math and everything else. And that's throughout the entire movie too. You see his grandfather's teachings being woven through in so many different aspects.
Yeah. And I think they did an effective job there telling this is one that will probably require multiple viewings to fully maybe get it. But I think I have a pretty good grasp on it the more that I've thought about it. And the more I think about it, the more I actually like the story. The Room is probably the one knock that I have on the movie, and that's kind of a minor thing. Like, I think they do a fine job of explaining the metaphor for what the room represents. Like, it's your part of your brain that is holding on to not only important moments of your life, but trauma and traumatic events and things. Like, you see why they want to keep that locked away and you don't want to access it. Because that's the way a lot of people deal with traumatic events, that kind of blocks it off. And it's kind of what the metaphor is for it. And I get what it is. I don't think it was the most effective metaphor, if that makes any sense, but I get what it represents and what it was intended to be. And they leave you on that shot in the room of just the room being empty, and it's like, don't go in there. It's rotted floors. Like, you don't want to access. It's just your brain telling you not to deal with those traumatic events and to kind of just block them off and act like they don't happen, or just, that's how some people deal with, PTSD and trauma and all that stuff, which that's kind of what the metaphor is. And the more I think about it, the more I'm like, okay with it, but it's just, I don't think it was the most effective avenue for the story. But, in the end, that's what we got.
Yeah, I don't think it had as a big impact. I get it's your mind. You're locking away the trauma, and you're locking away this. And it's also that part, well, the deja vu, or seeing things that may happen in the future. They're just kind of knowing all that. Like, there's so many different, that room is your mind and everything. But I don't think it's because of how long it's spent setting up and moving with it. It didn't have as big of an effect. I'm probably going to I might have a different feeling about it after I watch it again, especially with all the subtleties and all the depth and everything to it. But in the end, The Life of Chuck is a beautiful, well done story. Like, it sounds like I've been really critical over it, but it's me trying to dissect everything that it did, and it's heavy, it's layered, it's emotional. I'm still giving it like an 8.5. I think it's a really solid, good story. It tells it in a unique and different way. Some things work better than others. Like, there's some acts that I prefer over the others, but I think it's a well-told story that I wasn't aware of going into it, that I think it was well acted, well directed, and well told. There's just a few aspects that I think could have been done a little bit better in the first act in his youth to make everything a little bit more impactful. But it's a solid film that is going to be in the Oscar talks and is one of the better films of the year. And it's got me thinking and maybe overthinking. And that's kind of, I think, part of everything too, is overthinking things. And it's one I really want to dive into more. And it might go up to a 9 or a 9.5 after I watch it again and really go through all that emotion, because I'm going through my own kind of emotional journey, my own, I was trying to look up the word I had of my own multitudes inside of my brain that it goes into. It's one I will watch again and go through. Like I said, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is one of my favorite films of all time. This is in the ballpark of that film, of the uniqueness of the way it tells its story. There's some things that just could have been done a little more effective, but it's still an 8.5. Like, I feel like I've been extremely critical, but I'm still giving it a really solid score because it's just that good. But it just got me thinking so much about it.
Yeah, I'm giving it a 9, and that's where I landed. I'm surprised you landed as high as you did on an 8.9, just by how you were kind of talking about the film in the beginning. But I think with our discussion, it's kind of helped bring that along a little bit better. But yeah, man, this is just a really well done, thought provoking film that it's a giant metaphor for your own the world through your eyes is kind of the overall theme of the story. And you know, you get to the end of it and you feel like the whole world's kind of stopping around you and everything, you become disconnected and you deal with those stages of grief and you have those flashbacks of, you know, kind of evaluating your life all the way back to the beginning. And it's told in such a really powerful and effective way. The use of the room and the payoff for that really is what knocks it down a notch for me, just because I don't think it was as effective in the storytelling as they wanted it to be. I understand what the metaphor is for. It's kind of your brain repressing traumatic memories and things like that and what it's for. But at the end, it's still this really powerful, thought-provoking film that's really well acted. I love that they kind of tease it as a Tom Hiddleston film, but it's not really a Tom Hiddleston film because he's the end character. It's really the kid that does a lot of the younger version of him that does a lot of the heavy lifting in this movie. But you know, you get some there's a lot of big name actors in this film, like even as like bit pieces as like the parents in the film. Like you have Harvey Guillen is in the film a little bit. You have, you know, David Dastmalchian, I think is I'm totally butchering his name.
You get to butcher.
I get to butcher that name. He's been in so many other things too. But like
you said, Chiwetel Ejiofor as well, who's fantastic. That's why I said I was a little critical and stuff, because the biggest emotional impact to me in the film didn't even involve Chuck, because it was Act 3. It was in Chuck's mind, so it did involve him, but it didn't involve any of the Chuck actors.
But they were characters in his story from a different perspective. Right? It was really cool. I mean, you even had Matthew Lillard making an appearance as his neighbor, which was cool. Like I love Matthew Lillard.
See him doing something a little more dramatic, even though he's kind of being funny, but he's also that darkness dealing, like the dark humor of dealing with something really bad that's
really
happening.
Traumatic to you. Like I get it and I love it, and he shined in the very brief time that he was in the film as well. But it's just such a well done, thought provoking story. I'm putting my stamp on it now. It is going to be an Oscar consideration. Do not be surprised if it's one of the films nominated for Best Picture of the Year. I'm sure even though Tom Hiddleston's not in it a ton, he'll be in award conversations for it as well. And it's just a film that's just really, really well done. It's a wonderful metaphor about life through your eyes and how you perceive the world and how your experiences shape who you are and how you see the totality of your life when you're at the end. And I think it's just a really effective, well-told story. Like I said, 9 is right where I landed on it. A couple minor elements here or there could have bumped it up even higher for me. But yeah, I'm going to have this probably on my end-of-year best of list for sure. It's that well done of a story. And I know it's probably not going to do the best commercially, but it's one that if you get a chance, and normally I go advocating seeing movies in the theater, like I think you should go see it in the theater, but if you wait to see it when it lands on streaming at home, I think you'll have just as much of an impact watching it at home. But really one worth your time. It's a really wonderful, thought-provoking movie that I'm excited for people to see and check out because I really think it's worth a watch.
Yeah, we had to go out of our way to watch it because it wasn't at the theater that we normally go to. So we had to search it out and find it because it looked like it was going to be so good. And it was good. Like I said, I sound like I was extremely critical of it because it still had me thinking, and it still does. It still has me thinking about it. Like I said, I could bring it up to a 9. I think 8.5 is what I came into the recording as, and I was debating on it, but like I said, it was a very impactful movie that had me think that I really want to watch it again. So Life of Chuck is in theaters now. Go check it out. It's a beautiful, emotional, haunting film that's going to have you thinking. I think everyone's going to have a little bit of a different experience with it depending on how you look at life and your life impact and stories and how you see, because I saw the third act as such a haunting and beautiful thing that I wanted more of that kind of darkness, but we got a little bit more of the light with the kid in the end, and I think that's where I'm a little bit disconnected. I wanted more of kind of the end times because it was done such in a beautiful way, but I mean it's one to really dissect and look at, and it makes you look at your own life and it makes you look at everything. It was so well done. It's well worth watching if you can find a theater around you showing it. I think it actually premiered limited last year, and we're just now starting to get that slow rollout everywhere for it, or right in the middle of the summer where the big blockbusters are coming out and stuff. So yeah, it's not going to have as big as a viewership as it should, but it's one, even if you have to wait until it comes out on digital or streaming or something, watch this film.
One thing I'm hoping to see, and this is kind of just us tooting our own horns a little bit, I'm wondering if this episode is going to do okay because of the How to Train Your Dragon element to it. But I really would be interested to see how this episode does next award season when it's nominated and people are looking up things about it. And if they come across this episode, like all these guys went and watched it, let's see what they had to say about it. And I'm wondering if it's going to do even better later come award season when people are starting to look up this film, which is going to be nominated for some awards, I guarantee it.
Yeah, I mean, so far this is up. It's this and Sinners as the two best films of the year so far.
Absolutely.
Even though I was critical, I was critical of my own kind of perception and
Sure.
how I felt about it, and I think that's a good thing because it's an artistic film, and you're thinking about what part of his life had the most impact on you, and you see things in different ways and stuff, and that's just really done with how it is.
Comparing your own worldview experience with the experiences that he had and what you resonate with may be different than what I resonate with or what somebody else who watches it. And that's kind of that's some of the fun parts of filmmaking, I think, that you can get those emotions out of people. And get
Where your
thoughts.
mental state
is
when you're watching it, too.
It does have a big impact on how you view movies because I hear people talk about all the time, like, I went and watched this movie, I was having a bad day, it kind of gave me a sour take on the movie. And then I watched it like 6 months later and I was having a great day. And I'm like, you know what, let's give this another chance. And I wound up really liking it. I love, that's such a cool part of how you experienced films that, you know, your own personal like headspace and your emotional state and, you know, where you're at can have an impact on how you view these films, which is why I try so hard to go into everything I see and make a conscious effort to go into everything with a blank slate. Like try to be as disconnected from everything else going on and kind of block out all that noise, put it in my own room if you want to put it that way, and just kind of go into it with a clear head and a blank mind to kind of take what's being given to me and form an opinion on it that way. But, you know, we're human. Like there's days where I've gone and seen movies stressed out that I may not have liked and gone back and liked later, or movies that I was in a good mood and watched it and I thought, oh, it's a fun film, and I go back and watch it again. I'm like, how did I like this movie? Like, you know, that's some of the fun part of film and, you know, what we're doing here. And it's one of the reasons why you and I love it as much as we do.
Yeah, I love films like this that make you think not only about the film, but your life and perceptions. Yeah. And when you're done thinking about it and you watch it again, absolutely could enjoy it even more. You could enjoy it less. Yep. Like, well, I thought about all this and this and this and this, and well, now I've put so much in my head about what I think I saw, and I go back and watch it. Like, we know it was nothing like that I think. Like, it's great to have the perception and have those different viewpoints. As I said, everyone can look at this a little bit differently of how you are with this type of film when it's a little more artistic and it's about layers and layers and layers of emotion, and everything is just so subtly done when it comes, like I said, the different stages of grief. There's some that are talked about, but especially like there's a guy, you've got a lot of people because there's sinkholes and there's earthquakes, and so roads are pretty much impassable and people are having to walk back home, and you get one, which is funny, but you also got to look at it's one of the stages of grief and everything else too, that he's carrying a big heavy like briefcase with him, and he just stops, he chucks it to the ground, waits a second and just kept going, because you get like, well, here's acceptance, like, I don't need this weight, I don't need to be holding on to this, I need to drop it and just go.
Yeah, the more you think about those things, it all kind of works together and makes sense. I'm excited to see if you go back and watch this again, like where you land on it, like after a second watch.
I don't think it's going to go down. It may go up, but it's just because I'm an overthinker on stuff too. So I'm just going through all the layers of everything with it. And like I said, I sounded critical, but I really wasn't. It was more like just the impact the end at the beginning had on me was bigger than the beginning at the end had on me, and that's where my mind is trying to wrap around, like, well, I like the ending, but the ending was the beginning and the beginning was the ending, and it just like, but it's one of those, like, I think I've rewatched Eternal Sunshine 10-15 times and I still have a different appreciation for, like, every time I watch it. And I think that's going to be one of those when I'm feeling really philosophical or thinking about life and everything else, that I put this on and just really contemplate and look over things a lot. Like, it's one that'll have you thinking about the little moments, the big moments, and just everything in between. Like, and that's just a brilliant way to do a film.
You know what I want us to do? I think would be fun for you and I to do. Well, one, dance. I'm always down to dance. But two, go back and watch it again. And then if we want to watch it again, watch it in reverse order. Watch Act 1, then 2, then 3, and see how you think about it, and see if it changes like how you think about the movie too.
Or watch 2, then 1, then 3, or something like that. You
Now
could
you're just
potentially put this in different orders.
Now you're just getting in Star Wars territory, and you're just getting ridiculous. We can't.
Which order do you watch your Star Wars films in?
That's a fun question. Leave that answer in the comments for sure. But yeah, that's it's one that it's going to be fun to watch a couple times and see if you watch it again, having had this discussion and a little bit more time to think about it. I want to see how your perspective would change about it, if any. And it's going to be fun to talk about again for sure.
So moving us into what's coming up this week, we've talked about a bunch. We've been waiting for it to come out. 28 years later, is out here. We've waited quite a while to get the third film in the series. As we even last episode also, this is the third and not the fourth, and we're getting a trilogy after 2 films, and like, all right, that's racking my brain a little too much. But I'm looking forward to it. The trailers-wise, it looks like it has the same feel. It looks like it's going to be good. I'm really looking forward to checking this one out because I never did go to the theaters to see the first 2. I watched them. I think I rented them from Blockbuster back then and watched them.
That's just showing our age. After this, we need to take some Tylenol, I think, just to...
And a nap.
I'm definitely taking a nap after this. That is absolutely happening. But yeah, it's a film that we've been talking about forever now, and it's finally here, and I'm excited to watch it because I love the first 2 movies, and I'm excited to see what this third one goes. That's setting up a trilogy for making 5 total films, and we're not going to do the math again, but yeah, that's going to be one that we're excited to watch for sure.
I've been debating if I go back and I watch the first 2 before I watch this one because I kind of want to go in almost viewing it as something new and different and not as the third of it because it has been such a long time since they've come out, but since I've watched them, it's ones I really enjoy, but it's not ones I've returned to that often.
Sure.
So I'm really debating if before I watch it, if I go back and I rewatch the first 2 or not, or if I do that after I watch the third one.
And maybe there may be one to watch. I don't know if you'll have enough time to get in and watch them both before you go see it, but yeah, it's definitely ones that I plan on revisiting too. We'll see when I actually wind up watching them.
Yeah, this week we also have the latest from Pixar and Elio. So which looks like a very cute, fun family film. It kind of feels like it looks like classic Pixar in a way to it, like a boy who feels alone on Earth and doesn't feel like he fits in anywhere. So he wants aliens to abduct him. So he's trying in every possible way to call aliens down, and he gets his wish, but it gets him in the middle of some madness up in space, and it looks bright, colorful. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun.
It looks really cute. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm sure it's going to make a ton of money. Looks like a very family friendly film that's going to do very well at the box office. I'm excited to check that one out too because I love Pixar. I love most of the movies they've done, and it feels like they're back in a creative upswing again. So hopefully this is the next of many hits that they have.
Mm-hmm. On demand this week, we have Final Destination Bloodlines out on June 17th, so you can go back in our archives and see our review of that film. But it was a ton of fun. You know what to expect and what you want out of these films, and it delivered on that. So I'm kind of looking forward to watching it at home again. I don't know if I'm gonna buy it right away or wait till streaming to watch it, but it's a fun one.
It's unavailable. I tell people that it's a fun movie, and they look at me like I got 3 heads because of the topics.
Of how much death
because
happens.
the death is like, what do you mean it's fun? It's a movie about death and everything. It's very fun. It's very
fun
well
watching
done.
20 people die.
Yeah, of course. So 20 plus in that film. There's so much death involved in that. But yeah, that's the one that's gonna, be another one to go revisit and get some enjoyment out of. It was a lot of fun to watch, but that's going to do it for this week's episode. We have a little bit of a scheduling note that we want to address here. I'm getting ready to go out of town to California for the next, 5 or 6 days, which is going to interfere with our recording schedule. So normally we would record like a bonus episode to put out while we're out. We're not going to do that for this week. For the first time in 75 episodes, 76 if you count this one, we're going to take a week off. We will be coming back in 2 weeks with a brand new episode. In that episode, we are going to be reviewing 3 films to kind of make up for lost time there. So we will be reviewing 28 Years Later. We will be reviewing Elio, and we will also be reviewing the Brad Pitt film F1 that comes out the week I come back from California. I'm excited to check that one out as well. That one's going to be a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. So until then, in 2 weeks, I'm Josh, he's Brad, and we'll see you then. To find all of the episodes of We'll Bring the Popcorn, go to our YouTube page, hit the like and subscription button so you're getting our episodes when they drop each and every Monday. If you're listening to us in the audio room on any of the podcasting platforms that we're on, please don't forget to give us a 5-star review. It really helps elevate the profile of the show. And don't forget to go to willbringthepopcorn.com, where it has all of our archive videos, all of our social media information, as well as our merch store, so you continue to support the show in that way. We cannot thank you enough for your continued support.